Hello. Oh, you're on mute.
All right. You got my email that I sent in terms of what I found on the ability to do petitions, recalls in the state of Florida, that you can't do it for statewide or state elected officials, period.
Let me look right now. I see it. I was on the phone with DJ today.
Mhm.
I was like, man, the amount of things you learn from having a conversation with Eric is out of this world.
Just glad I can be of assistance.
I was like, this man got so much information in his brain. Hold on one second, Eric.
All right.
I see that we have an attendee in the room.
Oh, good.
Yes. Okay, I see your email.
Have to take a different tack on that part because you can only do some counties and some local officials. Really is a anti-democracy type of thing in a lot of these states when you don't have the ability to remove elected officials. I mean, goodness.
Yeah, I feel like that sounds about right.
Well, there should always be mechanisms because of efforts around accountability. I mean, there's just some things that are just needed. And especially when you have folks that are making decisions that are anti-democracy, anti-freedom, anti-everything.
And this is where this conversation about like how we don't know, you know, yeah. We don't know what to do. We don't know how to make the changes. We don't even know that they're passing these laws. We don't even know that they're doing this. This is crazy.
Yes, yes. So I'm ready to jump in as soon as you're ready to get us started.
I am. Let me grab these questions so I can make sure we stay on task. And this is going to be, I'm not expecting a ton of participants, but I am expecting us to record it so that we can reuse it and disseminate it. And then we'll start kicking this off more and more so we can all know what we're supposed to be doing in these streets, in these Florida streets.
Yes, yes, yes.
So I will kick off our official programming. So I want to welcome everyone to today's session on Let's Talk Cannabis. We are talking Florida legislation. I am going to introduce myself and then I'm going to kick it over to my guest co-host Q&A panel. This is going to be very conversational, but Eric Foster has a wealth of knowledge. And unfortunately, he is a UN fan. We forgive him for that. I mean, I do. I don't know other people.
Just representing y'all. Just want to let y'all know I'm representing.
I should obviously have my FSU gear on, but next time. That's for another time.
That's right, because you went to which one? Failure State or
why are you coming out guns
University
like
of
this?
Failure Crocodiles? Which one did you go to?
Definitely not the crocodile one.
Oh, so Failure State U. Okay, all right.
I don't appreciate that sentiment.
I got names for all of them.
I see you were really going hard. Yes. So yes, I'm excited about this conversation. This is going to be the first of many. This is a new programming that we're wanting to roll out here in the state of Florida. And so just as a quick introduction, I'm Tajanna Mallory. I'm the Florida State Director for Minorities for Medical Marijuana. I started in this role last year and have been with M4MM for the past year. It's been a great experience. And really my goal over, the next course of my time in this role is to help bring more education to Florida about what's going on in the community, especially as it affects Black and Brown communities. I want to make sure that one, our community, we know what's going on in Florida. And I'm learning right alongside everyone else. So Eric is the National Policy Director for M4MM. And I have asked him to just help myself as well as other people here in the state of Florida really understand the intricacies of the laws and what's going on here in the state. So I've come up with a few questions that are very urgent to what's going on right now here in our state. Legislation is in session, if you did not know. And so it's just really time out for us saying that we didn't know, for us, not getting involved. If we want changes to happen in this state, and we do understand that it's a detriment going on right now in our political landscape. So we need to get involved. We need to start doing our part to make sure that our beautiful state is being protected as much as possible, but also that the pathway starts to open up for Black and Brown people to be able to participate in the cannabis community here in the state of Florida. And I'm going to leave you with that. I'm going to kick it over to Eric so that Eric can introduce himself and give us just a little taste of his background.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Tajanna. My name is Eric Foster, and I wear a few hats. I am the National Policy Director for Cannabis and Hemp for Minorities for Medical Marijuana. We are the largest community-based advocacy group in the country when it comes to both the sectors of cannabis and hemp for people of color in both industries and for individual patient and consumer concerns. I'm also a vice president of strategy and business development with Banks and Company. We're an African-American owned public affairs firm headquartered out of Michigan. And we do work in both the commercial marijuana and hemp sectors, energy, education, healthcare, funeral home, governmental, and nonprofit sectors. Funeral home goes by death care here in Michigan. I'm not sure why they got in the room and came up with that as a name, but that just ain't really the best marketing name I could think of. Death care, Death Star, I don't know, that's just not really rocking and
Doesn't
rolling
sound.
for me. Just go by y'all a funeral home. Let's just stick with that. That's enough.
As we all know what that is.
Right. Don't scare the hell out of me by going in. We're the death care industry. Gonna be like, so are y'all Sith Lords or something? Yeah. Got out of being in the empire and decided we're gonna start a chain up.
Sounds definitely very scary.
So yeah, so this is one of the things that's been an important part of my work, and actually not just my work, my life, and kind of something that's germane in my family has been public policy, governmental interaction, governmental relations. I'm blessed to have a number of relatives that have been elected officials, former chair of the Maitland County Board of Commissioners, Ella Scarsborough's my cousin, former judge here in Michigan, Alex Allen is a cousin. And I believe, based on my cousin in Cincinnati, who informed us his father and her father were brothers, or are brothers, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley is also a distant cousin. We all come from Hemings Way, South Carolina. That's where our family roots come from. And then we were blessed to branch out for across the country in different areas. And so to that point, this is kind of something that's normal for us. I thought this was like normal in everybody's household, talking about policy, talking about how things at a state level, a local level, a county level, a federal level impact our lives. Well, when I got out here in these streets, first starting off in elementary school, that's when I got a rude awakening. Yeah, this don't happen in everybody else's
No,
house.
it does not.
So I'm here to be a part, and I'm glad that Roz has asked me to be a part of M4MM and asked Banks and Company to work with M4MM so we can help you, people who are interested in this industry, understand what's happening, how government impacts it, both federally and state, and where are the opportunities for you to weigh in and make your voice a part of it and take
Mhm,
advantage of the structures that exist. So thank you
mhm.
for inviting me. And I'm definitely looking forward to doing more of these in the future.
Yes. Now, I just love that I learned two things about you. First of all, I can never understand why you had a Southern accent and you lived in Michigan or were from Michigan. Now I understand your roots are deep, not only in policy and political conversations, but also deep Southern roots, it sounds like, which is
I still
great.
have a cousin on the Williamsburg County Commission. So I have a cousin because we still have a lot of family that stayed in Hemingsway and in
Really?
Williamsburg County in South Carolina. So
Yes. Well, that's awesome. And no, it is not common for families, and I would say especially Black and Brown families, to have conversations about policy, to have political conversations. I think that, over the last decade, I can tell that even in my generation that we have started to turn that landscape. My husband loves talking about politics, so he's blue in the face, and I just can't even keep up half the time.
mm,
So I'm certainly, as the Florida State Director, trying to get more involved in the state. I have lived in this state of Florida since I was 12. I moved around and, of course, end up coming back. So I'm based in Tampa, Florida, for anyone who doesn't know. But I love this state. And I don't, Eric makes a lot of fun of us because he says that we're down here in a tax-free state, but our government is so messed up. It's as if we're not even free anymore. And I can't
yeah,
even be mad about that comment.
Florida ain't free. I just want to be clear. Florida ain't free. Y'all are living in a dictatorship state, unfortunately, with a little short man who does not, if he actually exposed himself and talked to people that didn't vote for him, he'd really learn them. But he's
He
not
really would.
curious. He is
And
insulated and little. But that's my opinion. It's not M4MM's opinion. It's not Roz's opinion. That's not anybody else's opinion. That's Eric Foster. So if you want to come for me, you can find me on Facebook. Come for
Eric, you come out smoking, boy. So, speaking of which, what's heavily going on here in the state of Florida right now, and I'm going to jump right into the first topic or conversation. And just so you all know, Eric and I have been having conversations for the past couple of weeks about the state of Florida and the state of cannabis in the state of Florida, as well as the state of hemp, which brings me to Hemp SB 1676 and House Bill 1475. Now, if you don't know anything about these bills, Eric is going to give us a very high level overview, but it does have the potential to eradicate a lot of the Delta 8 and Delta 9 companies right now that are thriving in our state. So this is something that is heavily affecting small businesses here. This has also been an easy way for people to get involved in the cannabis industry and the hemp industries by white labeling products or rolling out consumables, smokables, all in the Delta 8, Delta 9 family. So if these bills get passed, those things will no longer exist and those businesses will no longer, from a hemp consumable or even synthetic hemp perspective, will not be able to be in business anymore. So Eric, tell us a little bit more about these two bills. And then, we can slide right into the conversation of how this is going to impact businesses here.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So one of the things that you all have to understand is in most legislative bodies, because every state except for Nebraska is bicameral. You have a House or an Assembly, and you have a Senate. Same with the congressional level, House and the Senate. A lot of times bills are introduced in the House and in the Senate with the exact same language, but coordination between a political party or between bipartisan members of both chambers to try to introduce the legislation to have two opportunities to move and advance the bill forward. Some cases, the House bill will move quicker, and then that's what everybody will get on board with. Some cases, the Senate bill will move quicker, and that's what everybody will get on board with. But it gives you two bites at the same apple. So that's what these two bills are. They are the same. But to Tajanna's point, what they do is it really plays off of what's been happening over the past 2 years since we really started getting into hemp and started really understanding the complexities. It's funny, the hemp industry and the commercial marijuana industry are basically little children. The commercial marijuana industry is like a 4-year-old, and the commercial hemp industry is like a 2.5-year-old. They didn't come with instructions. If you've been a parent, you understand. You love your kids, but you didn't get an instruction manual in the hospital that says, all right, when this is your manual to guide you through. You just got them, and it's like, Jesus help me. What I do?
That's
And
why I don't
you
have any kids.
and me being a father of 2 great sons, one still here, one deceased, but the best thing I've ever done is be a father. There wasn't a manual, it was you have to learn. And that's what we're
Mhm.
having with hemp. When the Farm Bill in 2018 legalized hemp, no one thought that there would be a dynamic of Delta, not the river or the Delta Bank off of the Mississippi River, not Delta Sigma Theta sorority, Delta in terms of the variation of the plant that has a higher THC concentration that can be synthetically developed as you are growing and developing the plant. Everybody
Mm,
just kind of figured that, all right, hemp is the cousin of cannabis, so hemp should be okay. Hemp should not morph into possibly a family, of merging of families. It should be able to stay in 2 different lanes. It should never be brother and sister or brother and brother. There should always be cousins. Well,
they were wrong about
unfortunately,
that.
yes, unfortunately, as the family tree grew with hemp, hemp found hemp found cannabis's long lost brother, which is Delta variants, Delta
Mm,
8, Delta 9, Delta 10. Well, that wasn't covered in the federal law. And so because hemp originally had been classified as part of the Controlled Substance Act of I believe it was 1973 or 74 under President Nixon, and then added to under Reagan. With hemp being in that classification, the ability for state programs to be set up had to first come from the federal government legalizing it, rescheduling it, descheduling it, so that you could then go forward. But then you started having the long lost brother of cannabis, the hemp Delta variant. Well, the problem with that is no one understood, how do we regulate this? Hemp was
mm,
supposed to be
mhm,
able to be under 0.3% THC, non-hallucinogenic and psychoactive properties, so we should be
mhm,
okay. Well, that's not the case. So what you've seen is right now, 15 states so far have passed laws to make hemp that has a Delta variant illegal for consumable product use. What are consumable products? So that's food, but that's also products that are used for personal care. That can be things from creams, that can be things from the like shampoos or rubs or other stuff. It can marry a whole lot of different things. So because of that, and then something else happened at the federal level. First, this year, the FDA had been studying, well, what do we do with hemp and food? So the
mhm,
FDA came back and said, all right, we're going to say that right now, CBD that is Delta, hemp that's Delta, or any of the Delta variants, we're going to say cannot be used for food products. And then the DEA just came out within the past month with its own ruling that based on their regs, they're going to classify hemp Delta variants as cannabis. So it will stay in the class of the Controlled Substance Act. It will be considered illegal. So what you're going to start to see is those 15 states are going to be joined by a lot of states that are going to ban this at the state level with these 2 provisions that have happened with the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration. So now in Florida, these 2 bills, and probably of the 2, the one that'll probably be the quickest vehicle is 1676, which is the Senate bill. it will ban you from being able to use hemp and CBD products that test into a Delta defined category. That limits your opportunities because if you're growing hemp, now what you have to be able to do is grow that hemp and produce that hemp in such a way until it does not get into the Delta round. That's a really difficult thing to ask because this is a natural thing that happens. It's hard to predict
You
the
can't measure it.
genetics that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
You can't tell the plant, now plant, I need you not to be Delta. I'm gonna keep coming out here and talking to you every day till it's harvest. Tell you, better not be Delta. You better
Oh
stay
my
at
gosh.
4.2% THC. If you don't, I'm gonna whoop you. Well, you
Okay,
can't.
so wait, Eric, so let me ask you this. Okay, so not only is this ruling gonna come against any consumables that are being made through these products, but it sounds like it's also about to negatively impact hemp producers because if they violate this, they're gonna be in hot water. But how, if there
Yes.
is no way to measure this, how then are they even gonna be encouraged to continue to grow?
So once again, the way you measure it is when you go through your testing because hemp has to be tested when it's harvested before it
Mhm.
goes to the processors. And then when it's processed into different products, it has to be tested. So you're going to find the delta or above the 0.3 THC level content. So right now, yes, this is going to add another crippling effect to the hemp industry. But
Mm,
my grandma Foster always told me, whenever there is problem, challenge, or confusion, it's also an opportunity.
come
So
on,
here's the
Grandma.
opportunity, guys. Industrial hemp. Industrial hemp products, if the hemp industry was working the way that it needed to and should work, consumables would probably only be about 15% of the total revenue producing market for hemp. The majority of it would be industrial products. So what are industrial products from hemp? Hemp is a very versatile plant. Basically, hemp is the Magic Johnson of plants. It can play all five positions, it can come off the bench, and it can coach a team. Well, that is what hemp can be in terms of industrial products. It can be everything from biofuel, and you can use it in biofuel from fueling cars to aviation fuel to heating fuel to other types of fuel. You can use it for hemp plastics. Hemp can
Mhm.
basically replace the plastic products that we have. And because it's better on the environment, you're doing two things at one time, replacing traditional plastics and cutting down on plastic waste. Hemp can be put into clothing. So this
Mhm.
nice shirt I have representing the U can be made out of hemp. This cup that I have that I'm drinking out of that also represents my Spartans from Michigan State can be made from hemp.
Nicotine, nicotine.
Well, Spartans first because that's where I'm from, that's my home, and the U second. So I'm just saying.
Okay,
But
fine. So wait, let me ask you this. Okay, I want to come back real quick. I want to come back to the new business opportunities that can exist in hemp. But
okay,
I want to go back a couple of steps because we were talking about these two bills and I want to ask you whether or not you feel like we are taking steps backwards in, and I know we're gonna talk about what's coming down the pipeline as far as adult use here in Florida. We're not quite there yet. But obviously, at a federal level, we a community of cannabis consumers and allies and patients, we want this passed at a federal level, potentially, depending on what your interests are. So, if at a federal level, the DEA and the FDA are already starting to add additional regulations to the hemp industry, how is this going to affect what happens federally when it comes to adult use?
so here's a few things. So one, let's put adult use in its own bucket because I'm gonna be honest, as a federal lobbyist and basic company, we lobby on that, we advocate on behalf of M4MM at the federal level. We're not getting cannabis legalization anytime in the next 6 to 8 years. minimum.
Okay.
So that's why I want to put it in its own box. As Al Gore said, I'm gonna put it in the lockbox and we're gonna swatch it while we work on this other issue. On the
Okay.
hemp side, what it's going to do is right now in America, we only have 20 licensed operating hemp processors for the whole country. We're a net importer of hemp-derived industrial products. Another thing that we're in a trade deficit on.
Hmm.
We need to, at the federal level, and this is part of what we're pushing for at Minorities for Medical Marijuana. So if you are into hemp, you need to join us so we can help you in this industry. We're pushing for a few things. So first, we're pushing for hemp to be added to the categories of biofuel in the various biofuel programs that the Department of Energy, that the Department of Defense through military and through Department of Ag invest money in to help develop these alternative fuel properties that are clean energy and can replace some of the petroleum.
Mhm.
Two, we need to get investment out of the federal government to help invest more into the development of hemp processors so we can start creating the multitude of products that could be sold in America and sold and exported to countries all over the world. Because
Mm,
I haven't even touched into the building materials, the plumbing
mhm.
materials, the this plant, like I say, it is extremely versatile and strong if developed into other products. Hell, you
Mm.
could build a sports stadium out of hemp.
I
That's
was at
how talented that it is. And
I was
so
at a
we need,
conference. Sorry, I was
okay,
at a conference and saw a display, and they were showing concrete insulation. They had turned it into press wood. It's like
yeah,
it's amazing. I didn't even know you could do all of this with him.
yeah, when, there's certain things that when God created them, you could say, yeah, you was right on time with that one. There's other things like say the aardvark, you can look at it and say, God, why? I'm not sure why, but I'm gonna roll with it. But with hemp, hemp, well, dandelions too, because dandelions really don't have much of a purpose. So they are on the red-headed stepchild in the black blind and gray-headed family reunion. But hemp is at the seat of the cookout. It's cooking and
Yes.
hosting everybody with what it can do, but we've got to invest in it. So guys, what we need for you all to do is to help us at M4MM with this push. The 2023 Farm Bill is being worked on now. We have been meeting with members of the House and Senate, with Republicans, Democrats, and MAGA Republicans to discuss, because there are three parties in DC, to discuss how do we use the Farm Bill to invest in industrial hemp. We've also been meeting with the Department of Commerce through their Global Export Diversity Program, where
Mhm.
they are working to push and get diverse products from minority communities, minority businesses to be able to help open up those doors that ties in with the Import-Export Bank. Do you know that if you're exporting products overseas, the Import-Export Bank will provide you financing to cover your cost of product. And if you have issues getting payment, you can kind of like a factoring thing, you can, it helps you with the money. So you don't end up going with a total loss. You may recoup a significant part of your investment in selling it overseas if your customer overseas decides to get like Smokey from Friday and run out and not pay you back. Well,
Right.
Import Export Bank will pick you up. That's your Craig. The Import
Okay.
Export Bank is your Craig. It's got your back. And that's a
Okay,
good,
wait. So we're talking about right now the opportunities to participate in the hemp. I'm taking notes. If people are not taking notes, you need to be taking notes. So we're talking about the opportunities that exist in moving forward the conversation and how hemp can be used being that SB 1617 and HB 1475 may potentially get passed. You're saying one or the other is probably going to happen.
Yeah.
So what a question is, so at the federal level, there are these opportunities that are starting to arise, but how can we move the needle here in Florida? We have a governor that we have to contend with, and then we also have, pushing the agenda, and this is a question that someone had, pushing forward the agenda, even in our medical marijuana market, is sometimes difficult. So how can we reshape that conversation here in our state?
So part of what can be done is at the state level, while we're working to get and this is what we actually kicked around in DC with a number of Congress people. So Congressman Don Bacon from Nebraska, Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri, Rep. David Trone from Maryland, Rep. Dina Titus from Nevada, just to name a few. The idea, Senator Mark Warner from Virginia, just a few. The idea that if hemp does become a Delta variant, that you then can repurpose it and reclassify it for industrial use only, not for consumable use. Because then when you do that, or if it continues to test over the 0.3 THC, and you've gone through your 2 statutorily allowed attempts at remediation to bring it under 0.3 and it fails, you don't have to waste your whole crop. You can actually make and have that used for industrial product, biomass, or other product development that you as the farmer / cultivator would do to work with the processor to then turn it into other products so you don't lose your investment. And then another thing too, and this is something that Simone, our National Director for Social Economics, my ace and partner and ride or die
She's
educator, but she helps
amazing.
me understand
She's amazing.
insurance and geoeconomic policy in ways that I thought I was smart on geoeconomic policy. She blows me away.
She's so dope. Shout out to Simone. She's great.
Yes, see money. And so she's working on how do we make changes to the crop insurance program to better protect minority farmers and especially those who are in the hemp sector, because the crop insurance does not give that many protections for you if you're in a situation where you have crop fails because of these things. So we're going to try to get as much into the 2023 Farm Bill to address all of these opportunities and the redirection of hemp that's Delta that can't be used for consumables, but can be used for industrial products. I use the analogy, hemp that's a Delta 10, if it's turned into biofuel, your car is not going to get high. You good. Your plane is not going to get high. If your plane starts talking to you now, that wasn't on us.
It's not the plane that's high, it's you that's high.
Exactly. But I say all that to say, and guys, I inject a lot of levity because I want you all to really pick up what I'm putting down, is the fact that at the state level, because we're in a place where at each state level, they have the ability to craft their own hemp plans, and also our tribal nations. So tribal nations in the state of Florida who have submitted a plan to the USDA for how they're going to regulate hemp. If you're one of the tribal nations in Florida that has not, you have statutory and other enumerated rights to do that. Please take advantage of that to set up your own hemp programming. But let's try to take advantage of that gray area. Instead of having to destroy that, let's petition to ensure that the Department of Ag in Florida and the regulators are allowing you to repurpose that hemp that is a Delta 8, 9, 10, what have you, for industrial purposes. So you don't have to lose your revenue opportunity. You've invested. You're employing people, you've invested. Guys, this is simple economics. If the leadership of the state, the little short dictator man, actually likes business, well, this is pro-business. That farmer especially that Black farmer. They've hired people, they've bought
Mhm,
supplies, goods and services. They've grown this crop, but now the crop tests as a Delta 9.
mhm.
That's a waste if they have to destroy all of that. But if they can sell it to a processor who can then turn it into plastics or building materials or biofuel or something else, they continue to make money, they stay afloat. And what does that do? That allows them to be able to continue to invest in their staff, continue to invest in their buying of goods and services, and continue to pay taxes. This is pro-business, people. So
Mhm.
at the state level, let's get with the Department of Agriculture. I hate that Nikki Freed ran for governor because she was a ally in this area, but we
Yes.
have to work with what we got. So my grandma used to always say, both my grandmas, and they didn't agree on much. One of the things they both said was you have to accept the environment that you have to be able to achieve a victory. So we got the ag
Mhm.
that we got. We need to be engaging in Florida to ensure that hemp that either test 0.3 or higher or is a Delta variant can be reused for industrial product development only. That way, that farmer, that cultivator is not losing money on what the work is that they've done.
So, for anybody who is listening and you have been interested in some type of avenue to get into the cannabis industry, Eric is telling you right now some very foundational information about one, how you can alter politics, right? So, we're talking about getting engaged with our Department of Agriculture. I love that nugget that he dropped about the tribal nations and how they can get involved. Obviously, we are here to leverage the playing field for people of color to get involved in this industry. And then, of course, he's talking about our favorite pandemic word, which is pivot. Unfortunately, these businesses that are currently using Delta variants in order to produce consumables are now negatively going to be impacted and their businesses are going to shut down. How then can we change their landscape, the landscape of their businesses, is by now pushing these initiatives and getting involved in the business on the industrial hemp side, and being a part of the conversation to get these laws changed and these policies changed so that we can continue to be involved in this industry in a diverse amount of ways.
And
I'm going to
Tajanna,
jump.
to this part
Yes.
and to that part, the what I'm proposing at the state level isn't something that has to be addressed statutorily through the state legislature. It can be addressed from, it should be able to be addressed in the administrative rules and regulatory process through the Department of Agriculture. So
Ah,
guys, what we need y'all to do is join us at M4MM in terms of outreach and engagement to the Department of Agriculture. We need you, if you're paying money to another organization who says they out here fighting for you in these streets and they're not talking to you about this, you need
mhm.
to drop that zero and get with this hero over here at M4MM because we can help you because we're looking at this in a realistic vantage point. You should not, because of the natural occurrence and the fact that nobody was thinking of it in 2018,
Mhm.
lose all of your economic investment. Let's take advantage of the grayness to then allow you to reuse, and let's get the state to start working with processors that are in other states, because right now there's not a licensed processor in the state of Florida. And let's also get the state to help develop processors. There are federal programs that can help with the cost of investment in the infrastructure that's necessary, even in the construction of these sorts of processor businesses, like the PACE
Mhm.
program through the Department of Energy. If you are developing a clean energy type, energy efficient facility that can provide financing support to help you build that facility and get it up and off the ground so you can go to work, but you get longer loan terms and the Department of Energy is working with you on that. So guys, let's get the Department of Agriculture to be a friend to help
Mhm.
you as a business owner, especially if you're a Black farmer, if you're a Hispanic farmer, if you're a Native American farmer, if you're a tribal group, let's work together on this in Florida. This is something that's tangible. This is something we can get done.
Yes. Yes, I love that. I love that. Okay. So now let's jump to what's coming down the pipeline. So as I mentioned earlier, the legislative session is in session. And so one of the things that is just people here in Florida are salivating over, and that is whether or not we are going to go adult use here in Florida. So obviously, Truly, they're pushing an initiative. They're getting education out, getting the word out about a bill that they have on the docket. And they're trying to get signatures to make sure that they can get it proposed. But what do you think, Eric? What is your crystal ball telling you, your policy brain going in there? And based on the relationships you have, I know you have some type of insight. So let us know what's going on here in Florida.
All right. So first off, Florida, as I mentioned, Florida ain't free. Hashtag Florida ain't free. Florida ain't free.
Don't you start selling merch.
Y'all have a lot of hurdles to go through to actually do a citizen initiative. And right now, there's over 20 in the queue for Florida to try to get on the ballot for 2024. In addition to the Truly sponsored Smart and Safe Florida adult use, there's another group that's also pushing an adult use legalization bill. And that one is, let me pull the name of them. They are Sensible Florida. And then you have a home cultivation group that wants to, for medical marijuana, allow for you to be able to grow at home. That's Wise and Free Florida. And then you got a whole lot of other ones that want to extend legislative session. You've got some proposals to improve the prisoner reentry programming to really create some positive pathways for folks when they're released from the correction system. And then you got some back leap crazy ideas that are out here, such as the
I'm nervous. It's Florida. And
oh, well, no, I'm not gonna call them back leap crazy because there's some of them I actually would support, like the prayer back in schools, and it's federally illegal, so it wouldn't go anywhere. But I personally don't mind it. I went to Catholic and Lutheran schools for my education, so I didn't have an issue and didn't have an issue in general. That's just me. But so you got a lot that's out there that's fighting for airtime with voters, fighting to get the petitions. But if you get the petitions passed, then you have to take it to the Secretary of State, and it also has to get approved by the state Supreme Court. Then it has to have a fiscal review so that they can do a fiscal analysis. And looking at the law when it comes to that, and I might have misread it, but I'm just going to go off of my reading of it yesterday, which is the statute that governs ballot initiatives is chapter 100, section 13 in the Florida Code of Statutes. I believe that you have to also, if I'm not mistaken, I believe you also, that fiscal analysis could also possibly derail a ballot proposal, depending upon how long it takes, or if it looks that it's going to be adversely negative in terms of revenue for the state. But don't hold me 100% to that. I've got to reread it a couple more times to make sure. But like I say, you got to basically go through more hurdles than the wolf did to get to the pigs and Three Little Pigs to try to get something on the ballot, just then for voters to vote for it. Now, then you have to get 60 votes for it to, 60% of the vote, I'm sorry, 60% of the vote for it to pass. Now, in every initiative that has been voted on by the voters and that's been a marijuana related initiative across the country, the average margin of yes vote has been 57%. So if y'all come in at 57, 58%, you don't get a participation trophy. It fails. Now, Additionally, though, there is a resolution that's being pushed in the state Senate. And it started in the state house, it's now in the state Senate, and that is, let me pull it, okay. So that is HJR 129. HJR 129. That's the Florida 66% for ballot proposal requirement. What that would,
Pause, wait, before you go into that, I just want to break this down for the people because you already said all the hurdles that you have to get to before you can even get people to, for us to even have the conversation about whether or not we can even put it on the ballot. And so that includes, and I want to make sure I got these steps right, that includes you initially have to get the signatures to even get it in front of anyone. And then once you get the signatures, then you have to get it approved by the Secretary of State. Did I hear that right? And then
yes,
once that happens, the next step is you have to put it in front of the Florida Supreme Court. Did I hear you say?
yes, because so it goes to so first you have to get the language approved. So that is
Mhm.
a strenuous process. Then the petitioners that you get to go out and do the signatures, they can only get signatures for people that live in the same county where they live. And it has to be
Mhm.
people that are Florida residents. So you've got that as an issue. So
State where
you
we
live
have a
in
bunch of
Broward,
snowbirds, by the
if you
way.
exactly. So if you live in Broward, you can't go to Duval and get petition signed.
Right.
That will disqualify. If you get 100 petitions signed and you live in Broward, you're a registered petition signer, and you get them in Duval, that 100 can be ruled invalid. You got to get them
Mhm.
from Broward. So it takes a lot of work and investment to make sure that your petition operation understands the complexity of these
Yeah.
rules. Then, once you get it, then it goes to the Secretary of State for validation of the signatures.
Mhm.
Once they get through validating and you've gotten the amount necessary, then it still has to go to the state court. One of the reasons why you didn't have one for 2020 was the state Supreme Court disqualified the petition after it had gotten the necessary signatures and it moved
Wow.
through various state steps. But then the Supreme Court said, no, it doesn't meet certain requirements, so we're not going to allow it. Oh, and guess what? Also, in your code of statutes for initiatives, you can only do single purpose ballot proposals. So
Yes, I did
then
know that about Florida.
yeah, so what does that mean, guys? So in most states that have done ballot proposals, like Michigan and others, if you're adopting medical or adult use recreational marijuana, you're going to address personal use, you're going to address home growth, you're going to address some social justice or criminal justice reform, you're going to address social equity or economic
Yep.
inclusion. You're going to address maybe supply diversity and procurement,
All
hiring.
together.
You're going to address taxation. You're going to
Yeah.
address putting in regulations around investment funds or
Mhm.
investment opportunities like they did in Illinois when they passed there by the state legislature, but they put a whole lot in. That's how it
Mhm.
normally works. Well, for you all, basically in a nutshell, the thing that you can do is adopt to opt in the general parameters that come with adding adult use and then allowing the existing medical licensees to be able to become licensed to sell under the adult use program.
Mhm.
They you don't even in the requirements, you can't say, okay, in addition to that, we want X amount of other licenses to be awarded, or we want to unlimited. It it's so limited. So you
Yeah.
then have to depend on the state legislature to
Mhm.
pass additional enabling legislation. A good example of what's going on like that is in the state of Maryland. They passed opting in to adult use through voter referendum as a constitutional amendment. And now the state legislature is passing all of the statutory and administrative to go with that. So it would have to be the same thing in Florida. So let's just be real, guys. I hate to say it, but if y'all think that if it passes, which it should, if it gets through, it should pass, that the legislature, if you keep the same people in the legislature, will make the proper amendments to include social and racial equity, to include supply diversity, to include community benefits, restorative justice, all of those positive programs,
Yeah.
then I got a bridge to sell you. Well, that's the thing. In voting for this, you all also have to take in consideration voting for those who are going to be in the state legislature to support
Absolutely.
this. If you support
Absolutely.
adult use legalization and you vote for a member of the legislature who is opposed to it,
You have shot
you
yourself
are-
in the foot.
right, you are going
Yes.
to get exactly what you didn't want to get, because
Yes.
you can't convince somebody, and I've been a lobbyist for over 20 plus years. It is extremely hard to convince somebody who doesn't want to do something to move on it. Not
Yeah.
saying you can't, but it's a whole lot easier to give your legislative body more people who actually are supportive of what you want as a voter. So I'm asking you all to think, if you support this initiative, also think about who you're going to vote for to be in the
Who you're voting
legislature
for.
and write the rules as statutory law, because that's the part two. Passing it
Yes.
is part one. Part two is
Well,
then what the legislature does to it.
I want to jump back to that 66% in order to pass. So simultaneously, what's going on here in Florida, we're having this conversation about whether or not we're going to get adult use passed. But then there's also a bill that is being proposed to, in order, currently the number is 60% of votes. And as Eric said earlier, it's been stopped at 57, 56. So if we are, hopefully with an extra push, it could get passed. But simultaneously, there is a bill out there that is requiring 66% of the votes, which if 60% is already making it difficult for us to get it passed, 66 is like a whole nother war in and of itself. So what Eric is saying, I cannot impress upon you all enough, is that it's so important. We only focus on the presidential election, but these local elections are becoming more and more important, because a lot of the things are not even going to the state level if some of these cities and counties are stopping it. I don't know how much you all know about how legalization happens, but it happens at the state level, but the cities and counties also have powers to implement various regulations as well. So every single election is absolutely important.
Yes.
For the sake of time, I want to just jump to a quick recap, Eric, and talk to you just about how we can continue to get involved. Obviously, we're talking about voting. That's super important. You also gave us some nuggets on getting involved in the Department of Agriculture and how we can start to change the conversation and even pivot our businesses into focusing on industrial hemp, which, by the way, is not even like a policy that we have to get passed. It's more so an administration rule based on what Eric was saying. And he's a great resource for even telling us how to get movement on that. That might be a whole nother call and conversation where we call to action and we actually start taking some actionable steps to call on the Department of Agriculture to help us change some of these rules so we can get more involved. But what else can we do at the local level to push the agenda in our favor, to really enhance and open up the opportunities for Black and brown folks to get more involved?
So guys, this is where you got to walk, chew gum, throw darts at the dartboard, juggle, and cook dinner all at the same time. One, on the hemp side, we need you all to be a part of helping to communicate to the Department of Agriculture that we need the ability to use hemp that tests as a Delta variant or continues to test above THC after your 2 remediation attempts, to be able to be repurposed for industrial product development only. That keeps people with a revenue opportunity. That's one. Two, for adult use, we need you to talk to your neighbors, your friends about this, to be supportive of it, but then also This is where the throwing darts at the dartboard and juggling comes in. You also have to look at who you're going to vote for to be in your state legislature, because as I mentioned, that is the part two. They have to vote on what
Mhm.
they have to vote on the rules. So the ability to get those things that I mentioned that you have in other states. And we put together a binder that I'll share with Tajanna so she can share with anybody that's interested, that shows all of the social equity, economic inclusion, racial, and economic empowerment provisions that exist in other state laws. So if you want some of those to fit into the statutory law, you need to vote for folks separately. That's in the endorsement, but look at people who are supportive of cannabis legalization beyond medical,
Mhm.
that are
Mhm.
supportive of opening up more license type for
Mhm.
people, and not just pigeonholing Black and brown people to one of the license types, making sure
Yes.
that the inclusion and opportunity is across all the license types. Also, that the
Mhm.
local communities have enabling rights in the legislation that goes along with this, that gives them the ability to set up additional rules of regulation, which can add additional opportunities to push economic inclusion, diversity, and other efforts.
Mhm.
These are things that you have to do all at the same time. And so, to use an analogy, this is like what Jimmy Johnson used to do to teams like Oklahoma, Nebraska, and others. They didn't know how to play a passing offense and a running game the way that the U played. The U would run up the score on you, and as they said, well, it's up to you to stop us. That's what one of the famous quotes I love from Jimmy Johnson. Like, well, it's not our fault we kept scoring. They could stop us if they wanted to. That's what y'all got to do to
We got to
this
keep
initiative.
scoring.
You got to keep scoring,
Yeah.
scoring on the hemp, scoring
Yeah.
on the getting this passed, scoring on getting
Mhm.
more people in the legislature who will listen to what you want and will put the policies in place. And then also we
Mhm.
need you as voices with M4MM, because we'll help with writing the language. We've done this in
Yes.
multiple states where
Yes.
we make it real easy. Here's the bill, we'll do the markup. In the
Mhm.
legislative process, when a bill is introduced, it rarely goes clean all the way through to signature. And clean
Yeah.
means no amendments, no modifications. It's
Yeah.
always amended. We write at M4MM amendments to statutory law, to administrative rules. We'll help with all of that, but we need y'all to be a part of the team. You know, there's
Yes.
no winning without, and I'll use another U example. When we played Penn State, somebody should have really watched that defense and understood that they was going to drop that middle linebacker back 10 yards every play. Told Vinny Testaverde, let's do some crossing routes. We need to have Michael Irvin or somebody doing some crossing routes in front of that linebacker to get him out of the way. I say that to say, if we don't have all of you all helping us, we're going to
Yes.
end up losing like the U did to Penn State. And I'm sorry, but I don't want to go down that right. Or for failure state, getting a kicker that won't keep going wide left and wide right. I'm just saying,
Eric, you are
a
all
kicker
over
that
these
can
new
kick straight.
analogies. I can't
We
wait till the
need,
next meeting. I'm putting on my FSU gear.
and I got more U gear to go, but we
Oh
need
my
we
gosh.
need y'all guys. We need y'all. Y'all have to
Yes.
be a part of the voice. Y'all can't let somebody tell you how they want you to think, act, function, as you're getting
Mhm.
right now out of Tallahassee, as you're getting
Yes.
right now out of the executive branch down there. You need, yes, it is about the,
Ignore that. Don't look at that.
you need people to hear you. You're Floridians.
Mhm.
You are a part of that state. My great grandparents were landowners in St. Petersburg. They had to
Mhm.
leave because we all know the story of Rosewood, but that wasn't the
Mhm.
only one of the red summers. in the South. St.
Wow.
Petersburg had one too. My great
Interesting.
grandparents had to leave. My grandfather came up to Detroit, set up the life, and then got my great grandma and the 5 youngest, because they were 8 kids. There were 3 older
Mhm.
ones, and then 5 youngest, to bring them up to escape what was happening in St. Petersburg. But before they left,
Wow.
they owned, and I believe it was off of T Street and Third. They had a whole block of property that they owned. My grandmother used
Oh
to
my
tell me
gosh.
their backyard faced the Gulf of Mexico.
And you know how much that property is probably worth today?
Yeah, but they got ran out, unfortunately, in those days.
That is
So
unfortunate.
I got Florida roots, y'all. I want to
Yeah.
see Florida be what it can be, not what it is, but we
Mhm.
need you. I'm hoping from this, and I'm hoping you all embrace my unique style of communication, because I need y'all to pick this up and join
Yes.
in this. We're trying to do real pragmatic things. We're trying to give you
Yes.
real successes and accomplishments and wins, not
Mhm.
pie in the sky, not hopeful heaven. You know, we're not Al Gore. We're not, who's a coach for you all that didn't work up at Failure State? Was
I'm
it
not
Charlie
even going.
Strong?
I'm
We're
not
not
even
Charlie
gonna.
Strong.
I'm not even gonna name them all.
Or we're not Ron Zook. We're not Ron Zook
I
for
was
our Gator
excited
fans.
about Willie Taggart. It didn't even
Willie
happen. It didn't.
Taggart.
It
Yeah, we're
didn't
not
happen.
Willie Taggart.
I
We're
was
not
so happy.
Ron Zook. We're not Al Golden. This is Bobby Bowden. This is Jimmy Johnson. This
Yes.
is Steve Spurrier.
Yes.
This is who we can be for you all, but we need you all to be a part of it.
Mhm.
If you all don't help us, we're not going to be able to give you that success that you need. So be a
Well,
part
I
of this
know
fight with us, people.
if any of the Florida residents have been feeling like me, it's almost as if things are happening so quickly in our government, we're not able to keep up with what's going on. And it's happening so quickly that we don't know how to get involved because all these things are happening, but there is no we just had some local elections, but generally when things are happening, it's not always election time. So it's not like you can just go out and vote when you feel like it and vote somebody out or in or whatever. So I love this, Eric. I appreciate your time so much, so greatly. I think this is going to be so amazing for our state. We're going to continue to have these conversations. Like I said, Eric is a wealth of knowledge. Not only is he familiar with all of what's going on locally, and it takes him 2 seconds to get familiar with it if I ask him a question, where it takes me 6 months of research and Googling. So, and then he also is involved on the federal level and can tell us how it is directly impacting what's going on here in our state. So thank you so much, Eric. I appreciate you greatly. Thank you for bringing your knowledge to our state. To all of the attendees, like I said, we will have more of these. We're going to schedule them out so that we can just get them on the books and people can jump in where they can fit in. I appreciate everyone for joining. If you're watching the replay, thank you so much for watching it to the end. I'm going to send a recap with some action items so that we all know how we can get involved. It's time out for us feeling like there's nothing for us to do and that we're voiceless. We do have some power. We just have to activate it. We just have to do the things that we're being told is going to move the needle. So I'm ready to win constantly, Bobby Bowden legacy and just constant championships. But I really want to see our state move in the right direction when it comes to legalization and also minority involvement in this industry. So thanks again, Eric. Thank you to all of you, and everybody have a good night.
Thank you all. And we need a new Orange Bowl. So join us on that fight too. We need a new Orange Bowl. Hard Rock Stadium.
I'm not helping you with that.
All right.
Have a good night. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you all too. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.